Grand Prix will without doubt be the most glamorous of the year. The hectic 78-lap dash around the casino, harbour, bars and apartments has an unrivalled and envied reputation. The Monegasque royal family takes a close interest. The scenery is stunning and the harbour, packed with the world's most expensive boats, lends a new dimension to a race weekend. The smaller speedboats are dwarfed by the larger cruisers and sailboats. The older boats have great class and are equally admired. But for sheer luxury, Stavros Niarchos' own 330-foot Atlantis beats every boat in the harbour. For many, the boats are affectionate reminders of loved ones or wealth gained. But for many others, they are simply a means of lapping up the Côte d'Azur's lovely warm sun after months of winter and spring. But there's no getting away from it. Monaco means Grand Prix at this time of year. As the Grand Prix hits town, Alain Prost leads the World Championship with 18 points from 2 wins. McLaren teammate Stefan Johansson is second with 13 points and a fine finishing record. Nigel Mansell will be keen to erase the sour memories of the Belgian Grand Prix, where he failed to finish and add to his score of 10 points. Local resident Nelson Piquet has 6 World Championship points, as has his own compatriot Ayrton Senna. Another local is Michele Alboreto, who has 4 points from a single World Championship finish. He shares 6th place with Andrea de Cesaris, who will celebrate his 28th birthday on race day. Ferrari driver Gerhard Berger is 8th in the series with 3 points, as has Eddie Cheever, who's looking forward to racing without an eye on the fuel gauge. Satoru Nakajima has a fine finishing record and is 8th equal, also with 3 points. Thierry Boutsen has 2 points from his 5th place in Brazil, and Martin Brundle also has 2 after his 5th place in Imola. René Arnoux scored a single point in Belgium, but the Ligier Megatron is still overweight. As the 26 cars go out to practice, they face surely one of the most fascinating and challenging circuits on the calendar. There is the superb climb to Casino Square, certainly one of the most spectacular complexes on any circuit, the long haul through the tunnel, and several tight hairpins. But this year there are various worries. Traffic, the bane of any racing driver's life, is surely to be worse than ever. The top drivers are worried that for the first time 26 cars will start the race, and 5 of those, they fear, will be much slower, due to their normally aspirated engines, and less experienced drivers won't be looking in their mirrors. But at least qualifying won't be as risky as previously, as the banning of qualifying tyres has done away with the crucial single lap, which was the biggest fear of most drivers during a race weekend. But now, let's join Ayrton Senna on the most famous street circuit of them all. Here he's accelerating past the pits and the start of a lap into Saint-Devote, the first corner. Accelerating up through the gears out of 2nd gear, up into 5th gear, down into 4th for the Massenet corner into Casino Square, he grabs 5th again down the hill, changes down as he overtakes a slower car and into the Mirabeau in 3rd gear, 2nd gear and into 1st for the hairpin at the Lowe's Hotel. Down towards Portier, through the second part of that in 2nd gear and accelerating hard into the tunnel. In the tunnel they get up to 6th gear, flat out the other side, and then changing right the way down through the gearbox and into 1st gear for the chicane. Round the chicane, and now accelerating down towards Tabac, up into 4th gear and then back to 3rd for the Tabac corner. 4th gear, then back to 3rd and 2nd for the swimming pool complex over the curbs there. 2nd gear still. Now accelerating up again, 3rd gear, Down into second again and first for the Rascasse corner, and now up to the final corner of the lap, taken in second gear, and now past the pits again. That's a lap of Monaco. In qualifying, no one covered a lap faster than Nigel Mansell. After 2 fraught days of qualifying, there was no doubt that he totally dominated practice. The Williams Honda driver did a fantastic job to set 4 laps in each practice session, each one quicker than any of those set by his rivals. He would start from pole position after starting the last 3 years on the front row. But many of Mansell's colleagues fear that he might clash again with a man said to be his major rival, Ayrton Senna. Senna's Lotus Honda had been superb around the twists and turns of Monaco, although the Brazilian was constantly searching for the optimum setup. But both Lotus and Honda were certainly trouble-free in practice. The computer keys rattled as Lotus's revolutionary active suspension strove to keep up with the bumps and curbs of Monaco. Nelson Piquet, in the second Williams Honda, was not so pleased to be racing around the streets of Monaco. He prefers to live there, not race. Even so, he winds up third on the grid in spite of an engine problem during the first qualifying session, and more problems during the second qualifying session. Although the Brazilian was second on the grid, he wasn't entirely satisfied. Much was expected this weekend of Alain Prost. Would he beat Jackie Stewart's record of Grand Prix wins by winning in Monaco again?
Alain, you're 4th on the grid. Are you happy with that grid position?
Not really. I mean, it's not a bad position anyway. I mean, in Monaco, it's much better to be on pole anyway. It's very important, and I think the Nigel's position today is very good because he has done a very good time. He get the best car, I think, for this kind of track, and it's going to be very difficult for me to beat him because it's going to be too difficult to pass Piquet and Senna easy the first part of the race, and I mean, we could have many problems, but being forced today, I'm very disappointed because my car was very good this morning, and I even did not realize the same time this afternoon than I did this morning because of the traffic, and it was impossible. I get very nervous in the car, so I'm not very happy.
So, not too confident for the 28th win here?
No, not at all. I mean, it's not a question of confidence. First of all, I'm nervous about this practice, and I know that the race could be very funny tomorrow because some cars could stop once for the tires, and cars could stop twice, maybe 3 times. You never know. If it's very hot, if we have a big problem with the rear tires, with the wear of these tires, we don't know what can happen. So the problem depends of the start, and it depends if Nigel is very quick, and if Senna is much slower than him, and we could not pass him. You know, that could be a big problem. But Monaco is not a race like the others, so you can never know exactly what's going to happen. If I was in pole position today, I would be very confident, but I am not, and I'm obliged to be, wait and see.
Do you think about the 28th win at all?
Yes, for sure. I think that I can win. There's about 5, 6, maybe 7 cars who can win this race, and the problem is you're talking about my 28 win, about this record, but I'm not thinking about the record. I'm thinking about the championship. So I want to win the race to get 9 points, and if I cannot get 9 points, I will try to get 6 points, 4 points, because I want to be world champion. I have plenty of time to beat this record. I don't want to beat him this race. I'm not obliged to.
But the pressure here was on Prost. What did veteran driver Jackie Stewart think of the man who would surely eventually take away his record?
Alain Prost at the present time, in my opinion, is the finest Grand Prix driver in the world, probably the finest race driver in the world, and therefore I'm very happy that it's him that's taking it and not someone who I would not have been proud to have it. I remember here at this Grand Prix, I actually beat the title held by Fangio, I think it was, to win 25. And I remember how proud I was of that. And I can only hope that Alain will be as proud to have the greatest number as I was when I beat Jim Clark's record. And I know I felt it as an enormous honour to hold it. So I hope Alain's as happy and proud as I was.
So much for Prost, the racing driver. But what about Prost as an individual?
I like him very much. That's one of the things that's nice about him taking my record. He's a good friend. We live not too far apart. Paul, my son, spends a lot of time with Alain. We see each other's family quite a lot. He's a very intelligent man. I think that's one of the reasons he's as good as he is today. He's just that little bit more intelligent than everyone else. He doesn't make the mistakes that other people make. He knows that a race is won close to the finish, not at the beginning. And I think that his aptitude and mental ability to control his emotions are probably his greatest assets. He has an enormous ability and natural talent, but you know, a lot of other drivers have that. It's the mental application that's most important.
He's won here at Monaco for the last 3 years in succession. Wouldn't a fourth victory be pushing his luck just a little?
Yes, but I wouldn't have expected him to win his World Championships back-to-back either. He's done that, and he has a very good chance of winning 3 in the trot, and I can't remember anyone doing that. So I think Alain Prost is ready to break records left, right and centre. Incidentally, I think Alain's going to win more than 40 Grand Prix victories. I don't think it'll just be a question of beating my record. He's only 32. He'll win 5 or 6 Grand Prix per year. If that's the case and he wins several this year, it's certainly going to be more than 40 within 2 years. I retired when I was 34, and Alain, I think, could go on much later, as I could have done. If he chooses to do so, then the sky's the limit.
An encouraging fifth on the grid was Ferrari driver Michele Alboreto. Ferrari seem to go faster when they're closer to Maranello, but was he happy?
I wasn't last year because I was fourth, but I had a big accident Tuesday, so in our condition was a good position to start.
What happened in that accident?
The typical accident in Montecarlo. Christian didn't see me arrive in my qualifying lap, and he moved a little bit, just 1 meter maybe, but it's enough here to have an accident.
And you went over his front wheel?
Yeah, and I fly for a few meters.
And then you jumped straight into the spare car and went out and set a very quick time.
Yeah, because I remained only 20 minutes to use my second set, so I have to walk back very quickly to take my car.
Now, you're using now a spare car. Is that as good as your race car?
Not really, but it's good enough to make a good race. So.
And from fifth on the grid, you feel fairly optimistic?
Yes, we are in the best position to watch the first corner between Mansell and Senna.
Now, you're not meant to be spectating.
Maybe in that case, yes.
Now, you live here in Monaco, don't you? How do you feel about the circuit? Is it a circuit you like?
Yes, it's very enjoyed to drive inside here. With this car, it's not really easy because there is too much power, but we must be very precise around these corners, and we can give something to make better lap time. So it's one of the last tracks, then the drivers is very important.
Alboreto's accident with Christian Danner was looked upon severely by the stewards, who excluded the German from the rest of the race meeting. So the 26-car field was now reduced to 25. Eddie Cheever was a very encouraging 6th on the grid in the Arrows. How did he feel about his most spectacular grid position of the year?
The car's run surprisingly well throughout the whole weekend. We haven't had any problems. We seem to be getting on top of all the little things that happen with the new car. I think the car will race well. It'll be an interesting first corner with Mansell and Senna on the first grid, first row of the grid. Who knows? Something good might come out of it.
Things going really well for the Arrows here. What about the engine situation?
I think we're on the beginning of a learning curve. USF&G are putting a lot of money and a lot of energy into the program. I believe in the near future, I hope, within a month we will have solved a bit of our problem, but I'm not quite sure. We'll only see it when we get there.
Now, you haven't got any fuel consumption problems here. Is that going to make a difference to your race?
Oh, enormous. The race I had in Spa was successful point-wise, but it was very boring As far as I was concerned, I had to be so careful of the fuel that I was racing about 150 less horsepower than I could have had.
So here, the situation's different.
Yes, much different. I can race as much horsepower as I want. My only fear here is not horsepower, but ruining my tires.
Is it a circuit you like?
Yes, it's one of those circuits where you can give a little extra, you get a big return for more effort. On other circuits, if the car doesn't run, you can put as much effort into you want to, you don't get anything back for it.
People saw you out in the circuit yesterday. They thought, that was the lap, and then you came around and did exactly the same again. Really looked on the ragged edge. Did it feel that way?
When I came in, both sides of my tires were all white from touching the wrong things. I was lucky yesterday. Somebody was looking after me.
Yet another local resident was Sweden's Stefan Johansson, whose McLaren would be found on the 4th row of the grid. The Swede had complained that his luck had never been good in Monaco, but that would have to change if he was to retain his excellent finishing record. Practice, fortunately, was relatively trouble-free, apart from a broken turbo on the Thursday and a lack of 4th gear on the Saturday. But 7th was his best grid position so far this year. Gerhard Berger was on the 4th row of the grid beside Johansson. However, things might have been better if he hadn't made this little mistake. Unfortunately, the Ferrari's steering rack came into the side of the tub and damaged it so badly that it was useless for the rest of the weekend. Ferrari were down to 2 cars. Thierry Boutsen also has an apartment in Monaco, but even though it might be said that he was racing at home, he wasn't happy. Benetton and Ford always thought that this would be their worst race of the year, and they weren't disappointed. The principal problem was that the engine suffered turbo lag out of the very slow corners, and Thierry's engine was also found to be badly down on power. Sharing row 5 with the Belgian was Riccardo Patrese in the Brabham BMW, who was celebrating his 10th anniversary in Grand Prix racing at Monaco. But there wasn't much to celebrate. A blown engine, gearbox trouble and lack of boost all held up the Italian. Under the circumstances, a place in the top 10 was a good effort. Monaco was the scene of his first Grand Prix victory in 1982. Undoubtedly, he would like history to repeat itself 5 years on. Like Arrow's teammate Chiva, Derek Warwick was encouraged by his Monaco performance, although he took time to find the right setup. And in the final qualifying session, his Megatron engine cut out, so he might have expected to go better than 11th fastest. Teo Fabi suffered the Benetton Ford malaise in 12th spot, and more besides. Teo doesn't like street racing anyway, it's not his style. And as well as the turbo lag, he got off to a bad start when he crashed heavily on oil during the first day of practice. Later, he would suffer a misfire and difficulty trying to find the right setup. There were no such problems for Minardi driver Alessandro Nannini. The good-humoured Italian suffered no major reliability problems, apart from in the warm-up when both cars suffered driveshaft failures. But that didn't stop Nannini starting 13th on the grid. Martin Brundle found himself in a one-car Zakspeed team, once teammate Christian Danner had been excluded. After he and Danner suffered engine problems on the first day, he later had brake trouble, but wound up on the 7th row of the grid. One man who could perhaps lay the turbo versus normally aspirated question to bed was Jonathan Palmer. Which did he prefer around Monaco?
I think they're normally aspirated. Obviously, to an extent, it depends on how well you're doing in each car. And if I'd been used to being at the front of the grid on a turbo car, I probably wouldn't be so happy driving the normally aspirated. But in terms of pure fun, pure driving enjoyment, there's nothing to beat the Courtaulds Tyrrell that I'm driving now. It's just fantastic. Around the corners, blipping the throttle, up and down through the gearbox, balancing the car on the throttle with the opposite lock, and it's fantastic experience.
So what's the disadvantage of the turbo car?
Well, the turbo car still doesn't have the immediate response of the normally aspirated. That's one thing. The normally aspirated, you obviously have got instant power, and you've got a wider power, you've got a wider response band. Whereas the turbos, whilst they're pretty good on responses, I gather now, particularly the Hondas and Ferraris and things, they're still not quite instant. And I think also it's slightly more difficult to balance the power coming on and off the throttle. With the normally aspirated cars, you've got quite a lot of engine braking when you come off, and that helps balance the car going into the corners. You don't have that in the turbo, so I think that's a bit of a disadvantage. Against that, of course, we are about 350 horsepower down, so that tends to have a bit of an effect as well.
What about in the race? Do you think you're going to be competitive in the race?
I think we could be, yes. I think the problem's going to be with the normally aspirated cars, one of overtaking. I'm quite expecting to be able to close up behind turbo cars but struggle to get by them, and I think you'll find that with the leading normally aspirated contenders that overtaking will be the hardest thing, but they'll probably have more pace than people expect. I reckon 2 or 3 seconds off the front running turbo pace.
So a possibility of points here?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the attrition rate here is very variable. In 1985, only 11 cars finished. I know, because I was 11th. And in 1986, I think 13 finished or something like that. So it does change around a lot. Years gone by, 8 have finished. But I think there's an odds-on chance of a normally aspirated car being in the top 6 around here.
Are you expecting to stop for tyres?
I'll tell you after the race. I don't think so, no.
After clouting the barrier on the first day of practice, Alex Caffey went well to set 16th fastest time in the heavy Osella Alfa Romeo. It would be the second time that Osella had raced at Monaco in 7 years. Satoru Nakajima pounded round and round the streets of Monaco as he learnt what was an entirely new circuit to him. In the end, he would start from 17th on the grid and hoped to preserve his 100% finishing record. Philippe Alliot was one of the few drivers not to improve in the second qualifying session. The La Rousse Lola Ford suffered both gearbox trouble and problems sorting out the new long trumpet intakes, but the Frenchman was second of the normally aspirated runners. Third was Ivan Capelli in the Leighton House March, the Italian now having use of 2 identical cars. But they suffered electrical problems throughout practice and qualifying, so 19th on the grid was perhaps not representative. It was ironic that poor Piercarlo Ghinzani should start behind the Osella, having tried, usually unsuccessfully, to qualify it for so many years. The Ligiers suffered badly at Monaco. 21st on the grid was Andrea De Cesaris, even worse off than Brabham BMW teammate Riccardo Patrese, but suffering a similar catalogue of disasters from the engine, gearbox and turbo departments. Sharing that 11th row with the Italian was Ghinzani's teammate René Arnoux in the second Ligier Lotto. The cars were still heavy, and their change of engine had meant a new engine cover and inefficient aerodynamics. Like teammate Jonathan Palmer, Philippe Streff was misfire-free this weekend, after the Tyrrell mechanics had found the cause of the problem. But Streff touched a couple of barriers and was found back on row 12. Adrian Campos should have started beside him, but the Spaniard crashed in Casino Square in practice and then collapsed from concussion. The organisers subsequently forbade him from starting, so the grid was now down to 24. Taking his 24th place on the grid was Pascal Fabre in the repainted Ford Cosworth-powered El Charro AGS. Once again, not particularly fast, but reliable at least. Idyllic Monegasque sunshine greeted a huge crowd, which flocked over the border from Italy and from all over France for the race. At the start of the 78-lap race, the front runners all made it cleanly through the first corner, with Nigel Mansell leading the field and no brush with Ayrton Senna. Mansell quickly pulled away from his rival in the Lotus Honda. Then came Nelson Piquet, Michele Alboreto, Alain Prost, Eddie Cheever, Gerhard Berger, Thierry Boutsen and Derek Warwick. And Mansell proceeded to pull away. Alain Prost, meanwhile, was back in 5th place and he had a lot to do. But these were early stages, even though Mansell was pulling away substantially from Senna. He in turn was pulling away from compatriot Nelson Piquet. Mansell's lead continued to extend. Piquet in third, then Alboreto, Prost, Cheever, Berger and Boutsen. But all was not well at the front of the field. After 29 laps, Mansell's Williams Honda suddenly slowed and Senna was through into the lead. Mansell continued to the pits, where Mansell complained of a lack of boost. Upon investigation, they discovered a broken wastegate. And while Senna continued on his winning way, Mansell was out. Behind Nelson Piquet's second-placed Williams came a tremendous battle for third, Michele Alboreto ahead of Alain Prost. For lap after lap, the pair circulated almost as one. Prost's traction better than Alboreto's, but Alboreto quicker in a straight line. But at the pit stops, Alain Prost got into third place, leaving Alboreto in fourth. Even so, Prost knew that his car was not well. Senna, meanwhile, just continued to extend his lead. A great battle in the top six between Cheever and Gerhard Berger, followed by Derek Warwick. But no one was touching Ayrton Senna in the Lotus Honda. He cruised serenely round, and nothing looked likely to take away this fifth win from him. After 78 laps, the checkered flag came out to greet Ayrton Senna, the winner. Behind him, Nelson Piquet in second place, more than half a minute down. And in third place came Michele Alboreto, after Alain Prost's engine broke 3 laps from home. Mechanical problems for the two Arrows meant that Gerhard Berger finished fourth, and the normally aspirated cars of Jonathan Palmer and Ivan Capelli were fifth and sixth. But was Senna's victory as easy as it appeared?
Yeah, probably looks like from the outside, but was not from the inside.
Very hard work.
Yes, Monaco, it's together with Detroit the hardest race during the year. And whatever it is, whichever position you are, whichever car you have, it's always very hard. It was easier to win this year than be third last year, because the car was much better this year than last year. Last year was terrible.
Was the suspension good all the way through?
It was working good right from the beginning, and there were no problems. The engine was also working fantastically well, and the tires and the brakes were only concerned because it's very hard circuit on them. So at the beginning I just tried to go as easy as I could to keep them in a nice situation for later, if necessary, to give attack.
What about when Nigel was leading? Did you feel you could get him or not?
Well, at the beginning we were together, then he started to pull away a bit, and I slowed down at the same time, just to make sure my tires would be okay. And he pulled about 8-9 seconds, then I pushed a bit, and he couldn't pull anymore, and then I started to catch him a little bit only, then he slowed down at that moment. So who knows, it was still a long way to go. Maybe he would even go further away, maybe he wouldn't keep that pace. So it would be for sure harder, but it was good.
So how do you feel the suspension's going to react in Detroit now?
I hope better than here. Detroit is very hard. Last year was the hardest one. For the foot, for the hands, for the neck, for the breathing. So hot there, you can't breathe. So for sure it's going to be harder than Monaco, and only God knows how harder it's going to be.
As the teams prepare for the trip across the Atlantic for round 5 in Detroit, Alain Prost can consider himself fortunate to have retained the lead of the championship in spite of his retirement in Monaco. But now Senna has closed up to within 3 points, and Johansson, Piquet and Mansell are all within striking distance. For the first time since Hungary last year, neither McLaren finished the Grand Prix, so Williams were able to close the gap thanks to Piquet's 6 points, and both Lotus and Ferrari have a more respectable total. With the scores now so close, the championships could change dramatically in